In this video I'm going to take a look at the Fujimi 1/24 garage and toolset and build it up for an upcoming diorama. So, cracking into the box, got quite a few sprues. Let's take a bit of a closer look. So we've got quite a few large panels, got the garage lift floor plate, a sprue with lots of small tools, and another one with more sort of panel work, and then a small sprue of some chair legs, and a little bag of some rope and springs, and a small decal sheet. Got our instruction sheet, quite small, and on the back there we've got a list of all the tiny tools and some painting options. So having a closer look, we've got a vise there and some small little spanners and bits and pieces, aircon/heating unit, some of the panels for the toolboxes, some of the lift parts. They all look quite good, some nice little details, handles there on the side of what I'm guessing is the toolbox panels. Here's some of the tiny tools. If you can see there, some of them have failed. They've got flashing around and they're so fragile that it's really impossible to get that off, or I couldn't get it off anyway. Texture on the wooden crates is quite nice. I think with some weathering that will come up really well. So cracking into it, decided to get the few pieces that don't really need much assembly out first and get them together and sanded and ready for painting. Then I started to work on the jack, which has got the articulated arms, one straight one, and then this two-piece one, which was quite fiddly to put together. But it's nice that it is all articulated and it went together quite well. Then there's the locking mechanism on the back for adjusting it up and down to set your height of where you want the car. I found this really fiddly to get in just the right spot. After it was assembled, it is a little fiddly to use, but it is a nice touch that it moves. They could have just made it static at sort of quarter height. So there's one side completed and the other side's just the same. So then it was getting the ramp posts out. Simple two-piece, just lining them up with the alignment pins that they've got and running a seam of glue down the side. Then it was just a case of slotting it inside and pushing the little pin button and dropping it down. As you can see here, it's quite fiddly and finicky. Then just put the cap on the top with a dab of glue. Then I tried the little shipping crates with the wooden texture. These were incredibly fiddly to line up. It could just be me, I wasn't having a particularly steady day with my hands, but it would have been nice if they had a better alignment pin. But I found these quite difficult, but eventually after lots of gluing, when they were together they looked quite good. I left one open and had one closed just for a bit of variation. Then I was looking at the desk that comes in the kit, and it's more of an office desk and I wasn't really needing that for the diorama I want to do. So I decided to chop the drawer holders out from underneath and use the drawers as little sort of tool crates and general boxes and junk you have around the garage. So it's just a case of snipping all of the connectors off for them and then giving it a bit of a sand. So with all that off, it was just a case of putting the legs on and the little bar that connects them across the top to make it a bit more stable. And it makes quite a cool little workbench. Then I wanted to do the engine crane. A lot of the pins needed a bit of fiddling and sanding down just to get them to sit right. So it took a minute or two to put together, but it was worth it, as it's nice to have something articulated that I can set in position how I want and change in the diorama as I need it. Before putting the two pieces together, it's just a case of adding the two little wheels that go on the bottom. Then with the wheels on, it's just a case of gluing the top arm onto the base. I haven't put the little pull around handle on because I want to paint that a different colour. For a lot of the other pieces, they're quite simple to go together. They're two-piece mouldings, like these little jerry cans, and this fire extinguisher goes together the same. The axle stands are also two-piece, which were a little bit fiddly. On the top of the cutting torch tanks, there were a couple of little gaps that I wasn't happy with, so I got some modelling putty and just dabbed it in with a cocktail stick just to make a slightly cleaner finish, and then when it was dry, I just sanded it off just so it didn't have any holes. So this was everything assembled and ready for painting. Some of the smaller parts I put on some painting sticks, like this little rattle gun, these 3 little sort of basic carbs that are designed to sit on the shelf. The shelving unit, I decided to cut as much of the sprue away as I could from the main legs and then paint them separately to the shelving panels. Tried to go for some variation where I could, so with the little buckets I decided to do one without the handle and then one with the handle. There are a few things I knew I was going to do heavy weathering on later, so I decided to get them in the booth first and lay down a coat of Vallejo rust. So once that was dry, I grabbed some chipping medium. So I just took a little piece of foam on some tweezers and blobbed it on in quite heavy patches because I want quite distinct sort of heavy chipping look. So it's back in the booth for a coat of Vallejo olive green. Then it was just a case of taking a wet brush and working away on top of the paint after it's dried until the chips start to pull through. All of the toolbox and jacks and those kind of parts I put together and covered with a couple of layers of Vallejo medium red. For a lot of the little tiny tools I decided to leave them on the sprue and just paint them as they are. So I just took a brush and I did all of the metal work with Vallejo gunmetal dark. Then for some of the finer details like the hinge point in the jack, I used a flattened off cocktail stick with a little daub of paint on the end. And just a few more details to do, like the inside of this jack and the fire extinguisher handle and the welding mask glass. There are a few nice little additional pieces in the kit, like this little camera. Just used a little bit of silver for the lens and then some more black for the outer body. Got the cocktail stick back again to do this little socket set. Last thing was some decal work, like the nameplate on the front of the welder. I always find decals really difficult to do. Just a case of getting it in place and there with the wet cotton bud and then using a dry one to tap it down and wick away any excess water. There are a couple of different options for doing the drums, so I did one with the little square single label like you can see here, and then I did the other one with the big wraparound label, which I had real issues with. I just could not get it to lay flat. I think in future I'm going to have to get some either micro set decal solution, or the other one I've seen people using is the UMP decal solutions. But getting these to sit level was time consuming and a pain. The ones with a little icon went down a lot easier. They were just the right size and seemed to sit nice and flat. Then a few little hoses needed to go on, like this hose reel here. Just thread it in the center, wrap it round, try and hold it down. Then there's a tiny little cap that goes on the inside that pinged off onto the floor more times than I can count. I just about managed to get it on top, and then a bit of glue and the second plate to complete the reel. But after it was done, I was quite happy with that. It's quite a nice little part. The seat back broke off as I was painting it, so I cut the stems away and turned it into a little stool. The welder, it tells you to tie knots and cut 2 pieces of this vinyl hose, but I decided to just run it through one hole, grab it with the tweezers and then feed it back through the other hole, rather than trying to tie complex little knots inside. Then you had to get the welding tools and just poke them onto the end of the hose and add a little bit of glue to seal it there. These came off quite a few times. I think if I do this again, I would use something like CA glue and a fast activating spray just to get a really strong connection. And there we have it. There's quite a few little pieces in this set, like you can see all the tools piled up in the toolbox. But overall I think it's a really good little set and it's not expensive. And it should, once put in the diorama, just add that little extra bit of detail that I'm looking for. And if you want to see me continue weathering these and put them in place, look for the workshop diorama that will be coming up on the channel very soon. There are a few things that I didn't use from this set. There was a battery and some other bits and pieces, but that's because I want to use those in other projects. All in all, happy with this, and I'll see you in the next video.